Our gospel reading this morning is from Matthew chapter 16, verses 21 through 28. From that time on, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and undergo great suffering at the hands of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, God forbid it, Lord, this must never happen to you. But he turned and said to Peter, Jesus turned and said to Peter, that's what it is, Get behind me, Satan, you are a stumbling block to me, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things. Then Jesus told his disciples, If any want to come and be my followers, let them deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit them if they gain the whole world, but forfeit their life? Or what will they give in return for their life? For the Son of Man is to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay everyone for what has been done. Truly I tell you, there are some standing here who will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. May we hear what the gospel is saying to us this morning. So Moses is not having too great of a time in Egypt recently. He got in trouble, killed one of the taskmasters, and had to run off into sort of hiding out there with the sheep, minding the sheep. And God, of course, has been hearing the cry of the people in Egypt. We heard in Exodus about God listening to their cry and wailing and everything that is going on. And we're told that God remembered his promises to the people of Israel. So now we find Moses, and of course we already know the end of the story, but at this point Moses doesn't, and he's out there tending sheep. And it's just sort of regular life, ordinary stuff for a shepherd out there. And suddenly, he's told, walking along, and he sees something shimmering. You know, we've all seen movies where somebody is in the desert, and all of a sudden they see what they think is water, or fire, or something, a mirage, that heat things. And, you know, I'm sure Moses probably thought, it's just a mirage. And he gets closer and closer and sees this bush burning, but not being consumed. Kind of weird. And God says, hey, come here. Probably not quite like that, but, you know, come here. Then he gets there, and what does God say? Take off your shoes. Why did God say take off your shoes? In the scripture it says, for this is holy ground. Right? It says, because this is holy ground. Many of us have probably visited someone. We don't do it at the parsonage, because we've already got cats. But anyway, but I had a friend who had a white carpet. And the thing was, when you got to their house, you took off your shoes in the entryway so that you didn't make the carpet all filthy. It was like a sign of respect, a sign of caring. There are traditions in many countries where you leave your shoes at the entry, and you come in with just socks or bare feet. A lot of people think it's all about the white carpet, but there's something else. When I get home, in my mind or something. So when I get home, Sandy, what is one of the first things I do?
Take off certain items of clothing.
Shoes. I take off my shoes. Do you take off your shoes when you get home? Maybe not in the entry, you know? I do. I want to get my feet out of these constricting things. But more than that, I want to be welcome in my home. When I invite someone in, usually they're there for some short thing, or they're just visiting for a little while, and it doesn't always occur to me. But, you know, I've heard these things. Take off your shoes, stay a while, relax, you know, take off your shoes. It's an intersection here, for me, with God and Moses and the bush and the holy ground. An intersection of hospitality and reverence. It's a combination of a sacred presence, a holy presence, an awesome presence that at the same time invites Moses to be at home in that awesome presence. To be at home in God. To be at home in holiness. It also does something else, and I can relate to this too. I have been teased my whole life about my tender feet. When I am barefoot, I will rarely go out and walk on the driveway or the sidewalk. It's too hot, and there might be a grain of sand that will irritate the bottom of my foot. When we're barefoot, we're a little more vulnerable. So to me, this gives a message of hospitality and reverence and vulnerability. In addition, when I'm barefoot, for some reason, I am way more conscious of my surroundings. I'm more aware of where I am walking and where my feet are going. So now we have reverence and hospitality, vulnerability, and awareness going on. All of this with holy ground. Footwear protects us from the ground and renders us sort of insensitive to what it could do to our souls. And that's just sort of a picture if you want to have a hominid in there. But if your feet are numb, which can happen with neuropathy, side effects of various things, diabetes or chemo, you also sometimes don't feel damage that's happening to your feet. But in a way, I think this is a picture of being totally aware of the holiness of God. It takes only a sentence for God to assure Moses that this burning bush is not really a mirage, that it really is the great I Am. It really is the God of his ancestors. And Moses does what? He covers up his eyes. He covers up his faces. Then God uses a whole bunch of verbs, things like observe, heard, know, come down, deliver, bring, seen, and of course send. All sorts of words in this passage that he talks about what he's doing and what he wants Moses to do. The good news of the whole thing is that God has heard his people's cry and was going to respond. But how is it he is responding? You. Go talk to Pharaoh. You. Lead the people. This is your task, your job. So what does Moses do? He argues. After hiding his face and being scared to take off his shoe, then he argues with God. Have you ever been called upon to do a task that you were afraid to do? Or maybe you were afraid to do because you were afraid you couldn't do it. Not so much because you didn't like the task. Sometimes maybe you've been called upon to do a task that made you feel incredibly important. Maybe. I'm going to call upon you to do this. And at first, it seems like a wonderful thing. Wow, look how important I am. Look how much confidence this person has in me. And then, it hits you. You've got to come through. That's kind of what was happening with Moses. He has the greatest awe and reverence for God. But who am I to do this? He says. Who am I? And who are you? Who should I say is sending? What kind of an answer is this? I am. There's no other way to say that immensity of God. Just because our brains can't quite get that, there's no other way. God is. But one of the answers God gives Moses about who am I to do this? Well, you're the person I'm choosing to do this. You can do this. Why? Because I will be with you. Moses doesn't have to worry about who he is or isn't. And he doesn't have to fret about his own inadequacies. In one reading of stories or things like that, one of the things Moses says about being the person to lead people, it wasn't this verse, it's someone else's, but it's better. Aaron is a better speaker than me. Send him. I don't speak well in public. God says, I'll be with you. So, what happens here? Moses is assured that he doesn't have to do the delivering all by himself. He doesn't have to do that delivering alone. He has God with him. And he's going to have his people with him. It's pretty dramatic. This mountaintop burning bush thing and this personal call. Identifying our personal call is not easy. Maybe it's supposed to be easy, kind of smash you upside the head. Because you're going to do this, but you don't think so. You're not sure that's what you're supposed to do. God says yes. It's a larger picture. It calls us to the true purpose of our life, to embrace that reality with God. There's no answer to the why. There's just the obedience to follow, and to follow those instructions, and to be the leader that liberates Israel. One of the things I think is wonderful about this story is that God doesn't let Moses just walk on by. Come here. Come over here. Come here. Moses is literally pursued by holiness in this case. Pursued to come to the holy ground. How does this connect with our reading from Romans? It's a little bit of the hows. It's a little bit of how to live our life as we live in holiness. You find it a little bit here. There were a couple parts that I just loved. Let love be genuine. Hold fast to what's good. All the way through this reading, we're encouraged to do all sorts of things. Most of them are counterintuitive to our usual human state of being. Most of them involve responding to injury or insult with blessing. We face so much today, and I don't know how to respond. I don't know how to give a blessing to people half a world away that are doing things that horrify me. It's probably a good thing I'm not called to go there, because I don't know how to do that. I do know that it can be nothing but good to help people wherever they are. That I do know. I do know it's unexpected to feed your enemy and clothe them. I also know as human beings we cannot help but want to defend ourselves. So I don't have any answer to that for you today. And I know it's been in the news, and I know it's been all over, and I know there may be ministers and pastors and evangelists everywhere that are waving one flag or another, or giving one answer or another. And I'm sorry, but I don't have an answer other than to continue in our own calling and our own love, and to minister to each other, and to encourage all of our leaders everywhere, whether it be our president, or the leaders in Syria, or Egypt, even the leaders of ISIS, to treat their people with love and respect, and to treat other people with love and respect. Feed them, give them water, clothe them, educate them. I don't see the reason for the hurt and the division and the greed. I just don't. I agree with Paul. Not in all things of all places, but I agree with Paul. Give love at unexpected moments. Take that holiness from God and learn to love from God. Fear God in the midst of all the noise that surrounds us. Paul tells us, bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Some philosophers of different times would say, if you curse them, if you take vengeance, you become them. So the one thing I know is not to do that. Doesn't mean I wouldn't get angry with someone now and then, bluster about. I hope that I end up praying about it and finding a good solution whenever that happens. Do not repay anyone evil for evil, but take thought for what is noble in the sight of all. And then this one sentence in Paul that brings to mind that desiderata that was so popular when I was in high school, the poster called the desiderata. It says, if it is possible, as far as it depends upon you, live peaceably with all. That doesn't mean be a wimp. It doesn't mean don't stand up for what is right. It doesn't mean say that isn't right. But it means that when you have a problem with someone about them doing something that's not right, you don't confront it in a vengeful, evil, hurtful way. You confront it with love. Most of us had the experience as children where mother would say, I'm just so disappointed. That hurt more than anything else. Those standards sometimes, not every child is fortunate enough, but sometimes parents are able to instill in their children a desire to do well at the same time knowing they are loved, no matter what. That's hard. But when that happens and the child does something wrong, as children are wont to do, When the parent says, "That was wrong. I'm so disappointed." Usually, that's more effective than anything. Even if they're 3 or 4 and haven't yet learned that, had that brain development where they're more concerned with others than themselves. They're still concerned with themselves because they disappointed somebody. They didn't get there, so it gets there. So Moses, he argues with God, but he does end up being the leader God calls him to be. Paul tells the church, don't go around beating each other up. Treat each other with love and respect. Welcome each other. Be hospitable as God is. Let them take off their shoes when they come in your home. And relax. When something horrible happens, it's easy for someone like me to stand up here and say we need to forgive and respond with love. And it isn't easy to do. But it is helpful to know that there is such a thing as karma, so to speak. God will take care of the vengeance. And the one thing that could be the worst of all is to let something bad that happens drag you down into it and become that. What is that? Don't let the something or another get you down. Don't sweat the small stuff, but there's something, don't let the bastards get you down. There's some sort of saying like that, but it's don't let other things interfere with your relationship with God. Don't let bad things cause you to stumble. God's love is all-encompassing. And for us, our task is to learn to love from God. To find where our personal, our community, our church ministries are with that love. To identify each of our own calling, our own holy ground, our own place where we can take our shoes off and be full of love and awe and reverence from God. And then put our shoes on and go out and do God's work. Amen.